Like, comment, and subscribe if you're ready to walk into the darkest corners of the justice system. Because once this story begins, there's no turning back. The night it all started, the storm rolled over Redwater County like a warning. Sheets of rain slapped against the windshield of Deputy Claire Holt patrol car as she sped down the narrow highway, sirens slicing through the thunder. Dispatch repeated the same words in her ear, each pass sounding worse than the last. Unit 3, be advised. We have a confirmed breakout attempt at Blackridge Maximum Security. Blackridge was not the kind of prison where people escaped. It was a kind carved into a mountain, the one reserved for offenders so dangerous that every guard walked in with a silent prayer and walked out with a heavy breath of relief. It housed criminals whose names had filtered into nightmares, men whose crimes were discussed in training manuals, documentaries, and late-night warnings, men who would never again breathe free air. But that night, something had gone wrong. By the time Claire reached the facility, a swarm of vehicles already crowded the steel gates. Floodlights stabbed through the rain, illuminating the watchtower and the dark smear of smoke seeping from the roof. Guards shouted, their voices strained with urgency. Claire rushed to the front entrance, where Warden Briggs stood soaked, shaking, and angrier than she had ever seen him. They weren't trying to escape, Briggs said. Someone tried to break in. Claire blinked, thrown. To break in? Why? The warden's jaw worked. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he led her through the metal halls of Blackridge toward Block E, the most heavily secured wing in the entire facility. Even before they reached the checkpoint, Claire felt something off. The air vibrated with a strange tension, as though the building itself was bracing for impact. And then the stench hit her. Smoke, burned wires, and something metallic beneath it. When they turned the corner, Claire saw the cause. A thick, armored security door had been blown open. Jagged steel curled upward like torn paper. In front of it lay 2 guards, unconscious but alive. Paramedics worked desperately over them. This door was rated to survive a military breach, Claire said quietly. Briggs nodded, which means someone out there has equipment they should not have, and they wanted one of the men inside this corridor. Claire stepped through the ruined doorway and froze. 5 cells lined the wall. Behind each thick glass barrier sat a man whose name Claire knew all too well. Men whose crimes had once dominated headlines. Elliot Crane, the chemist responsible for creating a toxin that terrified the East Coast. Warren Doyle, the meticulous kidnapper who left coded letters at every crime scene. Micah Rowe, the assassin for hire who never missed. Jonas Pike, the manipulator who convinced others to kill for him. And Daniel Harker, the man the FBI called the Silent Storm, the inmate Briggs once described as the closest thing to human lightning. 5 inmates so dangerous they would never be released. But someone wanted at least one of them badly enough to risk everything. Claire stepped closer, scanning the glass, the walls, the floor. The blast had targeted the main barrier, but the cell doors themselves were untouched. Whatever the attackers planned, they had not made it far enough to finish the job. Crane sat on his cot, staring calmly into the hallway as if studying a chemical reaction. Doyle scribbled something on a scrap of paper, not even looking up at the commotion. Rowe leaned against the wall with a faint smirk, his eyes tracking every movement with predator-like patience. Pike met Claire's gaze and smiled with a softness that felt entirely wrong. But Harker stood at the front of his cell, breathing slow, his hands wrapped around the bars though he knew they were electrified. Rain-soaked light flickered across his face, revealing a calm that unsettled Claire more than the blast did. They will try again, Harker said softly, and next time they won't fail. His voice was smooth and even, as if talking about the weather. Claire stiffened. Who is they? Harker tilted his head. You already know. Briggs gestured for Claire to follow him into the security office. Screens flickered with camera feeds from every corner of the prison. Glitches cut across several frames. We lost power twice during the attack, Briggs said. Someone hacked into our system. They planned the breach down to the second. Claire studied the footage. A van pulled up near the rear fence at exactly 2:03 a.m. The vehicle doors slid open, and masked figures emerged, dressed in black ballistic armor. They moved fast and efficiently, heading straight for Block E. One carried a device that glowed with a dull blue light. The moment he pressed it to the outer wall, the video distorted into static. Professional team, Claire murmured. Government-grade equipment. This wasn't a rescue squad. This was a retrieval. Briggs nodded heavily. Exactly. But which one of the 5 were they after? Suddenly, a guard burst into the room, panting. Warden, you need to see this. He handed Briggs a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a piece of metal, charred at the edges, but Claire immediately recognized what it was. A specialized detonator, military issue, one that had been discontinued years ago after a single elite unit was dissolved under controversial circumstances. What was this doing at a maximum security prison? Claire muttered. Briggs ran a hand through his wet hair. That detonator shows up in only one set of classified records. A Black Ops team known as Hawkeye Division. Claire's blood chilled. Hawkeye Division had vanished a decade ago after a scandal involving unauthorized captures and interrogations. Every member disappeared into a sealed file. Also, the public believed. Briggs lowered his voice. One of those 5 men used to be part of Hawkeye. Claire's heart thudded. Which one? Before the warden could answer, alarms blared across the facility. Code red. Blocky breach detected. Repeat, blocky breach detected. Claire spun toward the monitors. A small panel behind the cell corridor had opened. A hidden exit panel no one knew existed. A passage built long before Blackridge had become a maximum security facility. Someone had triggered it from inside. Claire stared at the screen, breath caught in her throat. One of the 5 inmates had just opened a secret escape route that wasn't supposed to exist. And he didn't hesitate. He stepped into the darkness without looking back. But when the camera feed stabilized and the prisoner's face came into focus, Claire felt the ground shift under her feet. The inmate who triggered the escape hatch wasn't the one anyone expected. It wasn't Harker. It wasn't Rowe. It wasn't Crane. It wasn't Doyle. It was the one man believed to be the least likely to run. Jonas Pike. And he looked directly into the camera before disappearing. Find me, he whispered. The moment Jonas Pike vanished into the hidden passageway, the entire prison turned into a storm of racing boots and blaring alarms. Claire Holt sprinted through the corridor with 2 guards at her sides, her heart pounding as she replayed his last words. Find me. No inmate spoke like that unless he had a plan that reached far beyond the walls he was leaving behind. The passageway entrance led to an old, dust-choked utility shaft sealed decades ago. Claire aimed her flashlight into it, the beam stretching into a tight tunnel carved between concrete walls. Layers of cobwebs clung to the pipes overhead. For a moment, everything seemed still, until she noticed a disturbed dust. Someone had wiped a trail clear with the side of their arm. Pike did not flee blindly. He was guiding whoever was coming for him. Seal every exit, Claire ordered. He cannot get to the surface. Teams scattered to lock down the grounds, but Claire sensed a deeper threat. Jonas Pike was not the kind of criminal who ran from something. He ran toward a purpose. She worked her way deeper into the shaft, following the trail. The air grew colder, the scent of rust and stagnant water thickening as she moved. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught faded markings painted on the wall. Old maintenance codes from when Blackridge was a military storage facility. Some led to tunnels that stretched to the mountain's edge. Claire slowed as she approached a heavy steel grate. It was pried open. Fresh scratches lined the metal. Something forced its way through. Something strong. Her radio crackled. Unit 3, possible breach at the northeast outflow tunnel. That was almost half a mile below the main grounds. Pike had a head start. Claire bolted back toward the main corridor. When she emerged from the shaft, Warden Briggs was rushing toward her, face pale and drawn. "He's not the only problem," Briggs said. "What happened?" Briggs thrust a tablet into her hands. At first, Claire saw nothing but camera feeds flashing between angles. But then she noticed it. Cell 4, the one belonging to Micah Rowe. The assassin, the one who never missed. Rowe was gone. "What?" Claire whispered. "There was no breach," Briggs said. Rowe's door opened from the inside. Claire stared at him. He triggered a manual override. He couldn't have. The panel is inside the wall. Only staff know where it is. Which meant someone inside the building had just helped a second inmate disappear. 2 of the most dangerous men in the nation were loose in less than 15 minutes. Claire steadied herself. Pike and Roe were never allies. Pike manipulates, Roe operates. Their methods never lined up. Unless, Briggs said, someone orchestrated this entire night to bring them together. Claire's chest tightened. Harker warned us. They will try again. He knew. Briggs nodded. And he may know what they want. Claire hurried towards cell 5. The hallway was chaos. But Harker stood exactly where she had left him, his hand still resting loosely against the glowing bars. Rachel Holt approached cautiously. 2 of your neighbors are gone, Claire said. Why? Harker lifted his eyes, calm as a still lake. Because they are not who you think they are. Who are they, then? Harker stepped closer, blue light washing over his face. Pieces. Claire frowned. Pieces of what? A plan, he said quietly. One that was set in motion years ago. Pike is the architect. Roe is the executioner. Crane is the mind. Doyle is the map. And I am the storm they feared would end it. He held Claire's gaze. The attack tonight was not to break someone out. It was to put them all back together. Claire's stomach twisted. A team. A unit, Harker corrected. Built to disappear in places where no one looks. They were the real Hawkeye division. Claire stepped back. You're telling me those 5 were part of a Black Ops unit? No, Harker said. 5 were recruited, but only 4 agreed to the work. Claire felt the breath catch in her throat. You were the 5th. Harker said nothing, but the silence spoke louder than any confession. Briggs' voice trembled. If they are reassembling their old unit, who is orchestrating it? Harker's eyes shifted to the side, as though watching something invisible. The one who disbanded Hawkeye and vanished before the investigation. The one they called Ghostkeeper. Claire stiffened. She knew the name. Every agent did. Ghostkeeper was a commander who pulled men from shadows and sent them into darker places. A man who vanished after Hawkeye collapsed under the weight of internal accusations no one could fully prove. Why would Ghostkeeper want them now? Claire asked. To finish what they started, Harker whispered. Before Claire could press further, a thunderous explosion shook the corridor. The blast wave slammed her against the wall. Sirens screamed again. Smoke rolled under the door as guards scrambled to secure the area. Briggs yelled, They are breaching the lower wall. Claire's radio buzzed. We have attackers inside the sublevel. Unknown number. Armed. Claire's pulse surged. Pike must have led them there. She sprinted toward the stairwell. Guards rushed past her, some heading upward, some downward. When she reached the lower level, smoke swallowed the narrow hallways. Sparks showered from exposed wiring. The smell of burning insulation cut through the air. And then she saw him. Pike stood at the far end of the corridor, illuminated by the emergency lights, calm and collected. Beside him was Michael Rowe, holding a suppressed firearm he must have taken from a fallen guard. Rowe raised a weapon at her. Claire ducked behind a concrete pillar as bullets cracked through the air. Pike's voice echoed through the smoke. Stop chasing us, Deputy Holt. You are not the enemy. Claire yelled back. You killed people. You manipulated them. You don't get to decide who the enemy is. Pike laughed softly. I did what I was trained to do, as did all of us. Rowe moved silently, clearing the path with calculated precision. Pike stepped closer. Ghostkeeper is building something. Something that cannot be stopped unless we reach him first. Clay's breath caught. You're saying you're running from him. Pike did not answer directly. You think we want freedom. We don't. We want survival. And you're standing between us and the only man who knows how to erase us. He nodded to Rowe. Rowe fired at the ceiling, triggering a partial collapse. Concrete fell, blocking the hallway between them. Pike's voice slipped through the dust. If you want the truth, find Harker. He is the only one who refused Ghostkeeper. The only one he still fears. The last thing Claire heard was Pike's fading footsteps and a steel hatch slamming shut. A second inmate breakout. A secret military unit reuniting. A rogue commander pulling strings from the shadows. And Harker, standing calmly inside his cell, holding answers she needed now more than ever. Just when Claire believed the night could not twist any further, Briggs called to her from the upper level. Claire, you need to come see this. She hurried up the stairs, lungs burning from dust and smoke. Briggs pointed at the main surveillance screen. The prison gates were wide open, and a single black SUV was pulling away from Blackridge, disappearing into the storm. In the back seat, barely visible through the tinted window, was Warren Doyle. 3 inmates were now gone, 3 pieces of the puzzle, and they were being collected. Rain hammered the windshield as Claire Holt sped down the mountain road, chasing the fading taillights of the black SUV that had taken Warren Doyle. Each curve of the road seemed tighter than the last. The storm turned the asphalt into a slick mirror, reflecting the red and blue swirl of the sirens. She stayed on them as long as she could, but halfway down the ridge, the vehicle vanished into the darkness as if swallowed by the storm itself. Claire slammed her fist against the steering wheel. She had lost them. By the time she returned to Blackridge, emergency crews had filled the grounds. Paramedics rushed injured guards to ambulances. State police cordoned off the perimeter. Reporters were already gathering beyond the gate, their cameras aimed at the prison like vultures circling fresh remains. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Warden Briggs stood in the command center, shouting orders, but the fear in his eyes betrayed the truth. Blackridge had failed. 3 inmates had vanished, and the world would soon learn what kind of men they were. Claire stepped up beside him. "We need Harker. Now." Briggs nodded grimly. "He's waiting for you." Claire walked through Blocky again. The hallway felt colder now, emptier. The cells that once held some of the most dangerous minds in the country stood in eerie silence, like abandoned rooms where something monstrous had once lived. The remaining inmates, Crane and Harker, sat quietly, watching the chaos unfold. Elliot Crane looked up as she passed, a strange glint in his eyes. "You're running out of time, Deputy." Claire ignored him and stopped in front of Harker's cell. The man was sitting on the floor, legs crossed, hands folded loosely in his lap as if meditating. "You said Ghost Keeper is behind this," Claire said. "I need everything. Now." Harker slowly lifted his head. The faintest hint of a smile touched his lips. "You always were quick." Claire felt her patience snapped. 3 men escaped tonight because someone resurrected the worst Black Ops unit ever created. I need to know why. Harker rose to his feet, stepping close to the glowing barrier. Hawkeye Division were designed to infiltrate criminal networks, destabilize terrorist cells, and disappear enemy leaders without leaving a trace. But Ghost Keeper didn't recruit soldiers. He recruited men who already lived in darkness. Men who didn't need to be taught how to kill, only how to obey. Claire felt the skin on her arms tighten. So Pike, Rowe, Doyle, Crane, they were never typical criminals. "No," Harker said softly. "They were assets, dangerous ones. And when Hawkeye collapsed, Ghost Keeper wiped their files and let the justice system swallow them. But he always knew where they were. He always intended to retrieve them when the world needed monsters again." Claire's voice lowered. "And you?" Harker leaned in. "I was the one who refused to follow him into the dark. I was the one who tried to expose him. He turned against me, ordered the others to eliminate me. But Pike disobeyed. That is why they were disbanded. Not because of a scandal, because a soldier refused a kill order." Claire exhaled slowly. "You were the target." "Yes," Harker said. "I always was. And now that they are free, Ghost Keeper will finish what he started." Before Claire could respond, shouts echoed from the far end of the hallway. "Code black and Block E chemical breach detected." Claire turned toward Crane's cell just in time to see thick white vapor pouring through the seams of the glass barrier. Alarms blared overhead. The system struggled to isolate the chemical dispersal, but it was too late. Crane stood in the center of the cloud, completely unbothered. With a soft click, his door unlocked. Claire froze. No, not him." Harker's tone was gentle, almost resigned. "You should go." Briggs rushed forward. "Shut it down. Lock every barrier. He's activating something." Claire drew her weapon. The hallway filled with fog. Crane stepped out, hands empty, expression calm as a surgeon walking into an operating room. "No sudden moves," Claire warned. Crane stopped, tilted his head, smiled faintly. "Funny, that is exactly what Ghost Keeper said the first day he met me." Before she could react, Briggs shouted, "Claire, move." crane flicked a small silver sphere down the hallway. Claire dove behind a pillar as it detonated with a burst of concussive force. When the smoke cleared, Crane was gone. The chemical fog had melted the locking mechanism on a side access door. Another inmate had slipped into the storm. 4 pieces collected. Claire staggered to her feet. Harker, why didn't you warn me he'd try something? Harker looked at her with an expression she could not read. I warned you about all of them. Claire's breathing quickened. Ghostkeeper is rebuilding Hawkeye. What does he want them for? Harker stepped back from the barrier. I will tell you, but only if you take me with you. Claire stared at him. You think I'm letting you out? You have no choice, Harker said calmly. I am the only one who can track them, the only one they still fear, and the only one Ghostkeeper cannot predict. Claire hesitated. The idea was impossible, reckless, insane. But the alternative? A rogue commander rebuilding an elite unit of criminals who operated with surgical precision. 4 of them already free. The last one cooperating with no one but the truth he carried. Briggs stepped beside her. We can't trust him. We don't have to trust him, Claire said. We just have to use him before Ghostkeeper does. She turned back to Harker. You get one chance. You run. I put you down. Understood? Harker nodded once. Perfectly. Briggs tapped into the security panel with shaky fingers. The cell barrier faded with rising hum. When the door unlocked, the sound felt wrong, like releasing something that had been contained for a reason. Harker stepped out. Tall, controlled, quiet. The air in the hallway seemed to shift around him. Claire kept her gun trained on him. You lead, I follow. Harker nodded and walked toward the exit. Ghostkeeper will not wait. He has what he needs. 4 men for 4 missions, each one targeting a place that should never be touched. Claire followed him through the doors, rain splashing across her boots. What about Doyle? She asked. What is his role? Harker paused at the threshold, staring out into the storm. Doyle is the map. He knows the locations. But the final target, the place Ghostkeeper wants most, he kept that from everyone. Why? Claire asked. Harker turned to her with a look that froze her blood. Because the location is not a place. It is a person. Claire's breath caught. Who? Thunder rolled across the mountains. Harker's answer was barely a whisper. You. Claire felt the world tilt beneath her. Me? Why me? Because Harker said, you are the one person alive who can expose Ghostkeeper. And he wants you erased before you realize why. Claire swallowed hard, rain stinging her face. And why is that? Harker held her gaze, unblinking, because he did not just recruit criminals. He recruited bloodlines. His soldiers were chosen for their lineage, for what they inherited, for what they could pass on. Claire's throat tightened. What does that have to do with me? Harker stepped closer. You are Ghostkeeper's daughter. Claire stumbled back, the storm roaring in her ears. The truth hit harder than any explosion. Ghostkeeper was hunting his own blood, and he had unleashed 4 impossible men to do it. Harker whispered, if you want to survive, you need me. Behind them, alarms erupted again. A new breach, another explosion. The storm intensified, as if the mountain itself were preparing for war. Claire looked at the dark road ahead. She had no choice now. Ghostkeeper had declared his war, and she was a final target. If you think this story was intense, the narrator's voice would say to the audience, the next one goes even deeper. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what comes next.